On the world of Azeroth lies the continent of the Eastern Kingdoms, and within the Eastern Kingdoms, to the south, in the shadows of the great human city of Stormwind, lies the Elwynn Forest. A calm, pretty, quiet place with a healthy mix of roadside dangers and welcoming comforts. A place where adventures begin and bright-eyed newcomers take their very first steps into the world with dreams of heroism and glory. But this wood is not fully what it seems, because you see, this place is also the home of a monster. A terrifying, beastly creature that strikes fear into the hearts of the forest's inhabitants. A large, menacing, bristly bruiser that has spilled untold amounts of blood here. A villain that across the entirety of World of Warcraft's nearly 20 years has killed more players than the majority of raid bosses. You know his name, you know his game. The big bad villain of today's video is the legendary, despised, feared, and ever dangerous level 11 elite Gnoll named Hogger. Now listen, before you come after me, man, I know that you know that I know there isn't a ton of lore here necessarily behind this particular bad guy, especially in comparison to like any other Warcraft character. But I would argue that there is something way better. Decades upon decades of hilarious abuse that Hogger has inflicted on this player base.
God damn it! Not again!
Known lovingly as a noob filter back in the days of Vanilla WoW, Hogger represents this iconic and massive difficulty spike very early on in the starting area for humans that has vaulted him from this simple forgettable quest mob to an Azeroth legend over the last 2 decades, spawning untold amounts of memes, community events, ridiculous forum posts, and appearances in games outside of WoW entirely. Because dude, this is an enemy that if you don't know what you're up against, will absolutely curb stomp you, leaving your head spinning and hopping in general chat to say the fabled phrase,
"Looking for group Hogger."
But even though his storytelling power may be lacking, there is absolutely still an interesting little tale to tell. His gang being wrapped up in local violent affairs connected to another great minor villain we covered in the past. Then you have his beastly race being fascinating creatures of unknown origin themselves, with Hogger playing the role of chieftain amongst his group. And let me tell you, as time went on in WoW's development, Hogger leveled up, bruh, becoming a dungeon boss and so many other things. So I gotta know what is up with this dude. Why is he considered so difficult in Classic? Of all those tough quest mobs in the game, how come Hogger has become this cult favorite? And well, what is his ultimate fate and lasting legacy? Ladies and gentlemen, I am Ghost, your host as always, and I want to take a quick opportunity here to thank all of my fantastic patrons for supporting this channel away from YouTube. You guys are the best. And now without further ado, please accept my party invite. Join me as together we take down the famous Hogger. Well, before we really dive into the meat of what makes this villain so special, let's take a look at Hogger physically and just kind of figure out what this is. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Boy, ugly as hell. And seems to be a hybrid between a man and hyena. Definitely not a visual appearance that exudes friendship or a potential ally, right? But what Hogger actually is a creature called a Gnoll, a fantastical beast man enemy type that are found all over World of Warcraft. But they are pretty basic mobs, very common in lower level zones, hanging out in large, densely packed groups, huddling around cooking fires, patrolling the perimeters of their camps, and always looking for a fight. But as iconic as the Gnoll is to Warcraft at this point, it's actually not a Blizzard original, and as much as it might surprise you to hear it, this creature has roots dating back over 100 years in real-world fiction. So the very earliest mention of a Gnoll of any kind that I personally could find came in 1912 in a story written by Lord Dunsany called How Nuth Would Have Practiced His Art Upon the Gnolls, which was published within the book titled The Book of Wonder. And this little story centers around some dude trying to rob these odd forest-dwelling things whose homes are decorated with massive gemstones. But you can see in this illustration for that story, the Gnolls are these kind of creepy ape-like things. Very, very crude, but very interesting and inspirational, because this story sparked several others by various authors of that time. Most notably one by a woman named Margaret St. Clair, where she described the Gnolls as greedy beings that love emeralds and enjoy hiding in hollowed out trees, spying on people passing by, sometimes robbing them. It's very, very basic, foundational fantasy creature stuff. So as far as fantasy game roots leading to our dog Hogger, we need to look no further than the original Dungeons & Dragons game created by Gary Gygax in 1974. Gary apparently pulled direct inspiration from those original stories, but he created something totally unique for his game, a troll-gnome hybrid, hence the name Gnoll. But later on, in 1977, the creature was completely overhauled in an effort to have more beast-like enemies in the game. This new version being the very familiar hyena-human deal, a race that almost always had a tendency toward evil and chaotic alignment. But Gnolls are very possibly also inspired by mythological stories from around the world of beastmen, werewolves, and how hyenas specifically have long been associated with malice, deception, and bad luck across different African cultures. Well, the influence of Dungeons & Dragons in Warcraft, it's painfully obvious, dude, across the board. So it's no surprise that as they were implemented into Azeroth, they took on a very, very similar role. Gnolls here are known to be extremely unintelligent, aggressive, and lazy, living in the wilds of the world, rather primitive and not very kind to outsiders. They love to make weaker creatures do hard work for them as they kinda sit around and chill, but it's the combo of stupidity and aggression that also causes a ton of infighting and turmoil within their kinda crude hierarchy of clans. But I will say, there are definitely instances in the history of Azeroth where Gnolls became a serious threat to the more advanced races of the Eastern Kingdoms. The Gnoll War is one such instance, where about 100 or so years before WoW takes place, a chieftain named Garfang was intelligent and organized enough to corral the chaos of his people, unite the clans, and actually launched successful coordinated attacks against the city of Stormwind, prompting large human armies to have to go in there and clean things up to deal with the so-called Beast King. It's pretty impressive. Now that is all just to say, although Gnolls don't typically represent much of a geopolitical threat in Azeroth, with the right leadership, they can certainly be a problem. And after that Gnoll War, humans were not going to take any risks when it came to future Gnoll threats, just like Hogger. But hold on, my friends, because I got good news. I have a side quest for you, and all you need to do is sit there, keep looking cute, and check out the incredible sponsor of today's video, Project Orochi. Project Orochi is a streetwear clothing brand inspired by Japanese mythology and art, but with a video game related twist. You see, they have tons of original designs that are super subtle and very tasteful references to some of my favorite games ever made. Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, Sekiro, Ghost of Tsushima, and many others. I mean, dude, look at this Bloodborne Lumenwood Garden tee. Or my personal favorite from their whole collection, the Ashes hoodie with the little bell from Elden Ring. Oh, baby. But honestly, even their original designs that have nothing to do with video games are clean. I love the Fisherman and the Waterfall tee especially. So please, I urge you to click the promo code down below to support this small business and my channel at the same time. And while you're at it, enjoy a 10% discount with that Ghostcharm code, as well as free shipping within North America. Be sure to also give their Instagram a follow to stay up to date on new products, or I'm gonna send Hogger after you, man. Thank you again, Project Orochi, for sponsoring this video, and now back to our feature presentation. Well, the star of our show was certainly a leader amongst his people, and Hogger's specific clan of Gnolls that he ruled over are known as the Riverpaw. So within Classic WoW, the Riverpaw Gnolls can be found in two main clusters within the Elwynn Forest, here and here, but also have numbers all over the coast of Westfall just to the south, with Hogger himself keeping a nice comfortable central position amongst his clan, here on a little hill on a little peninsula area in southern Elwynn. So as we have stated a few times, yes, Hogger was originally intended to be this really basic character during a quest, but you know me, son, where there's a pile of pixels, there's a story of some sort. So I've always wondered, what is Hogger's agenda here? I mean, there has to be something. Now, if you are a fan of this channel and the Villainpedia series, you are probably familiar with another video of mine from a few years back on a wonderful antagonist named Edwin Van Cleef, the leader of the Defias Brotherhood, a man hellbent on revenge against his former home city of Stormwind. So for his full story, I do think you should check out that video, as it's one of my favorites I think I've ever made, and it gives wonderful full context. But to put it very simply, he is pretty much this pissed off pirate lord, hiring all sorts of unsavory groups like goblins, ogres, pickpockets, and cutthroats to make life miserable for Stormwind, disrupting their operations, kidnapping people, and causing general chaos in and around the city. But Edwynn meanwhile schemes from the safety of the Defias hideout known as the Dead Mines, an early game Alliance dungeon located in Westfall. Well, the Riverpaw Gnolls, and in turn Hogger, are one of the many parties on his payroll. Their presence in this peaceful part of the forest is requested by Edwynn personally, paid to murder and harass the locals, distract the guards, and really just be a nuisance. Something that Hogger and his goons seem to be doing very, very well. And I really like that this information is found by the player naturally, as every Gnoll in this part of the game has a small chance to drop a quest item called the Collector's Schedule, a Defias document connecting the Riverpaw Bros to Edwynn's operation, which is pretty cool. I mean, seeing this kind of chain of command is really satisfying as you're uncovering the Defias stuff at the same time. But I'm gonna be honest, that's pretty much it for Classic WoW's Hogger. When you look at him and interact with him, he's just a Gnoll, no more lore, no personality traits abnormal from his kin. He is simply standing over there with a fat bounty on his head, running things and hiding amongst the thickest part of his pack. And I guess I have always assumed that because he is the chieftain of his clan, he's like the strongest or the most ruthless or smells the worst, something like that. Gnoll culture absolutely strikes me as one built around sheer unspoken meritocracy. Like if one Gnoll is really tough or smart or could play the piano like crazy, the rest probably just are scared and fall in line to follow orders. But now, my friends, we get to the fun part of the video, which is the actual Hogger experience. I think it's important to note that the majority of this video is quite obviously referring to Hogger in classic/vanilla World of Warcraft. Over the years, as expansions came out, Blizzard softened the old world, removed elite status from so many enemies, and just kind of made the entire experience of playing WoW a lot easier, which in many ways is too bad. But at least with Classic WoW and currently Season of Discovery, that original Hogger experience is absolutely preserved, allowing him to pound ignorant players in the modern age all over again. It's a beautiful thing. Now, if you ask me, it's no secret at all that since World of Warcraft launched, the majority of Alliance players have opted to skip out on anything interesting whatsoever in their gameplay experience and pick human as their character's race. Because, oh man, who would want to be a handsome Chad dwarf, or insane whiz-crackled Finkeldork gnome, or a blue guy? Human is just flat out the most popular choice across the entirety of World of Warcraft for whatever reason. So if you follow suit and select human, it is actually here in Elwynn Forest that your journey begins. Northshire Valley, a beautiful little area to get yourself acquainted with your class, learn the ropes, and hey, possibly even make a homie or two. As you likely know, Vanilla WoW over the years has built up this reputation for being very, very difficult and at times punishing. I mean, that's kind of what this video is about, right? But let's keep it 100. The starting areas like this have always been a breeze, and that is by design. These are literally built to hook you on the game's mechanics by making you feel powerful and in control, dispatching most enemies with just a few abilities and leveling up very, very quick. These starting zones, like Northshire, empower the player, stuffs them full of confidence, and then propels countless starry-eyed level 5 or 6 newbies into the world, feeling more than ready to take on whatever Azeroth throws at them. Little do they know, Hogger is soon gonna eat that ass.
Give me the booty now!
But not only does this villain have to be viewed through the lens of Classic, he has to be viewed through the vanilla lens of 2004, because believe it or not, there was a time when the game was brand new, and nobody knew what the hell they were doing here. The world was mysterious, massive, and it felt like it was trying to kill you constantly. So back then, especially, enemies like Hogger placed this early in the game world were designed to hit those unsuspecting newbies like a cement truck. But hey, I mean still, any player in 2004 or today right now that continued their little adventure in Elwynn would absolutely naturally have faced their fair share of challenges. The Kobold Mines, Princess the Pig, the Murlocs north of the logging camp are all legitimately deadly stuff for a new player. I died to those stupid Murlocs like 6 times while making this video. But it's actually on the way out of the zone when you think you're all done and ready to head down to Westfall that you come across a small guard tower called the Westbrook Garrison. And proudly posted right outside is a wanted poster for guess who?
Wanted, Hogger. A huge Gnoll, Hogger is prowling the woods in southwestern Elwynn. He has overpowered all attempts at his capture. The Stormwind army has placed a generous bounty on the Gnoll. To earn the reward, hunters should bring proof of Hogger's demise to Marshal Duggan in Goldshire.
I cannot tell you how much I love that they specify his being huge, but this is the first quest that your character will have picked up that is actually labeled Elite, something that a new player might think nothing of. But this is of course signifying that the enemy or enemies involved in this quest are of elite status with the iconic golden dragon portrait. And boy howdy does the reward line up nice. The Footman tunic, Stormwind Guard leggings, and balanced fighting stick are not only some of the most powerful early game items available around here, but additionally iconic public boasting garments signifying you took down the Hog. And honestly, the quest is exactly as simple as it sounds. You walk south, kill Hogger, grab his paw, turn it in, get paid. So then, what is the big deal, dude? Because as much as I'm giving the vanilla era credit for his kill count and infamy, even right now he still claims hundreds of lives on the hardcore servers and Season of Discovery every single day. Probably as we speak. Well, I think the Hogger challenge has a few angles to it. Number one is that element of surprise we've kind of been talking about. Elite enemies out in the world don't just have a fancy portrait, they are tuned to have much bigger health pools, do way more damage, and have a few deadly abilities at their disposal to cause you problems. You can honestly think of them like mini-bosses. Hell, I would say that even a healthy amount of seasoned players that have taken Hogger down multiple times are likely to just kind of waltz in here and underestimate him, forgetting just how hard he can hit, especially for cloth-wearing classes. The second part of the challenge is that the Gnolls in this area are dense. I mean dense. They're everywhere and respawn super quick, making it very easy to die just trying to get in there and locate Hogger, and even easier to get overwhelmed during the fight itself. It's a minefield. And number 3 is his 3 abilities, a charge, a 2-second stun, and an instant cast that can reduce your armor by 50% for 20 seconds. I mean, if he gets you standing still with that debuff or running away, you are going to feel it. But a fun little side note, when WoW first came out, Hogger and several other similar early game elites were all given 666 health, the number of the beast, baby, which makes me think Blizzard kinda knew enemies like this were gonna be Grim Reapers. So, okay, he's tough, for sure. Then what is the best way to defeat him? Well, I gotta be honest, it ain't rocket science, man. To kill Hogger, you simply have to be careful and be prepared. Because this entire quest is meant to be a teaching moment in World of Warcraft, an example given to the player early on that, hey, when you see a dude with this golden dragon thing, that enemy means business, but it doesn't mean there aren't ways to overcome that challenge. So you can kite him around as a caster, carefully evading the other Gnolls. You can use engineering bombs to get some burst damage, stock up on all sorts of potions, and get gassed up before the fight. Or you can learn why the phrase, looking for group Hogger, became so famous. Yes, the path of least resistance is indeed to just group up with a few others and burn Hogger down. I mean, even with just one other person, you are going to have absolutely no problem. No crazy mechanics or anything at play, you just use all your abilities at the same time. Maybe throw a heal or two, and bada bing, you're done. And at this point, the player base of Classic is so knowledgeable about the game, anyone can solo Hogger on any class. There's even certain challenges associated with killing him at a specifically low level or without using certain spells, weapons, whatever. Like so many things with World of Warcraft, what once became this big, scary, talked about thing, even in jest, is today pretty trivial. So if you die to Hogger now, I'm gonna laugh at you, man. It's not like I died to him last week on a hardcore rogue or anything. So no matter how you decide to take him down, no matter how many deaths you experience along the way, once Hogger is eliminated and the bounty is claimed, you can rest easy knowing you helped make Elwynn Forest that much safer from this particular villain. No one else will have to face the wrath of Hogger for at least a minute or so before his respawn timer ticks and he reappears. So the final piece of this villain's puzzle is the cult following, because if there's one thing you can count on large groups of online strangers to do, it's make something out of nothing. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not even really sure where to start with this section. So how about instead, you just look at this, the satirical yet official Wowpedia.com info page on tactics to beat Hogger. However, this page portrays him as the actual leader of the Defias Brotherhood, a 4-phase 25-man raid boss that summons Gnolls zombie armies, uses an ability called Insane insane that kills all players in front of him in a cone and has 100 million health on heroic difficulty. Or how about this very similar comment from 2008 on Hogger's Wowhead page, which is still there, this time with a ton of goofy ass detail like how you need 3 main tanks, how Hogger's only going to enter phase 2 when a gnome mage with pink hair dies, and how he grows to the size of Gruul, then the Gnome King Mechatork comes out, tanks him, but sacrifices himself so that the raid can succeed. And then the loot drops cited from this fictionalized version of the Hogger fight are these legendary items, Ashbringer, Thunderfury, Sulfuris. Then you scroll down just a little bit and you see all these other people on Wowhead from 2008 playing along with the bit, saying, oh, I heard no guild has succeeded yet, like my cousin lost his mind trying to do this. It's just fantastic, stupid as hell, old internet stuff that still makes me chuckle to this day. But all this funny stuff, it definitely all started in general chat within Elwynn Forest. I mean, think of the innumerable new players over years that were getting slapped around by Hogger, then hopping in chat to ask for help or strategies or whatever. And these are the kind of things that in a game like WoW, with a player base this large and not overly serious, can totally just snowball into these community-crafted narratives and jokes, turning Hogger from a whatever gnoll into this evil demigod monster. I mean, we saw a very similar phenomenon in the video I did on Mancrick, the orc. But this also bled over into gameplay in a really fun way with one of my favorite things on Earth, actual real Hogger raids. I'm talking about legitimate 40-man raid groups being formed solely to kill the normal level 11 elite Hogger. But the catch with these is that every player involved would be level 1 and naked, turning the fight into an absolute bloodbath, with Hogger just jumping from player to player, one-shotting them, and the raid group frantically spamming their 1 or 2 abilities trying to take him down before the wipe. It was the kind of community event that no matter what you were doing in-game, if you see in trade or guild chat people forming a Hogger raid, you drop whatever, roll a human, and join in. Just incredible server bonding type stuff that I miss every day, man. It was special. And I just think it's very cool that when Blizzard first launched WoW, there were all of these like really big lore characters, the obvious ones, Sylvanas, Arthas, Thrall, etc., that the developers had kind of established as the important ones that we all needed to pay attention to as far as experiencing World of Warcraft. But the players also responded by selecting some of their very own favorites, characters that were important to us, heroes, villains, and NPCs that no one at Blizzard could have ever guessed would have been given this sort of cult status. I mean, listen, say whatever you want about Blizzard as a company, they do have a lot of problems, especially in the last few years. But when they see players love something, a character, a place, whatever, they respond. It all started during the Burning Crusade in patch 2.3, when a bunch of old world elites were nerfed into being normal mobs, but Hogger was left untouched. Then, in Wrath of the Lich King, when a statistics page was added to the game to see all the things that have happened to your character, you know, distance walk, damage dealt, things like that, death by Hogger was one of the things it tracked. In the Trial of the Champion dungeon in Wrath, he is summoned by a boss as a memory of a past powerful enemy. Then, during BlizzCon 2009, a top raiding guild called Premonition was raiding new content in front of a live audience, and to everyone's surprise, the final boss was a level 80 elite version of Hogger, and the raid wiped on the fight. He whooped their ass. Then Cataclysm saw probably the biggest expansion to Hogger ever. His entire area where he spawns in Elwynn was given a new name, Hogger Hill, and it completely changed the entire encounter. So if you ran off of Hogger's Hill, he would no longer aggro and just kind of run on back home, but mainly, once defeated, instead of dying, dude gets arrested by the cops and brought to the prison of the Stormwind Stockade, which is, of course, another dungeon you do later on, like in the 20s. But when you get there, he leads this uprising and ends up being one of the main bosses in that dungeon, saying Forest was only setback. It's so stupid, I love it. Blizzard started selling this Hogger plushie and pins and other merchandise. When Hearthstone, the Warcraft card game, launched, Hogger featured front and center during the player tutorial as your first opponent. Then he's also a legendary card and has a unique card back you can unlock. Actually, he's multiple cards, and the flavor text of one of them says that Cthulhu, the old god, checks under his bed at night for Hogger. Then, when Heroes of the Storm, Blizzard's attempt at a MOBA-style game, came out, Eventually, yes, Hogger made his way in there as well as one of the heroes you could play as, standing alongside legends of all of the company's properties. And then, bruh, when the Warcraft movie came out, there was a very fun little cameo where you could see clearly a wanted poster for Hogger. So I think you can see what I mean here, man. This stupid gnoll that meant nothing to the larger scope of the game initially is now literally one of those members of the inner circle. All because he would regularly kill little 10-year-olds that had just gotten WoW for Christmas. It's pretty incredible, man. And there are very, very few characters across all of video games that have ascended quite like Hogger has. But I do have to remember that this is a video about a villain. And it's tough because there's obviously very, very little villainy to talk about and analyze. Hogger is simply a creature bound to his gnoll nature. He's violent, he's ruthless, he's stupid, and he is completely for hire. The man paying his bill happens to pit Hogger against us and against the free people of the Alliance in this part of the world, so we gotta do what we gotta do. But the magic of this character and the point of the entire video is how an NPC like Hogger can become a villain much more grandiose and honestly ridiculous than he ever actually is in-game, simply because the players latched onto him and what this encounter represented to the community. And I think a huge part of it is just how many people played human back in the day and now, whether it annoys me or not. So now, as we always do, we must ask the question, why did Hogger fail? And let me tell you, bruh, he failed because I found this warlock named Festerer or something to group up with, and bro didn't stand a chance. So the next time you find yourself in the Elwynn Forest, make sure to do your part. Head down to Westbrook Garrison, pick up that quest, and prepare to risk it all when you face down Hogger. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the end. This was a very fun littler video to make after that Baldur's Gate epic in the last upload. I want to thank again Project Orochi for sponsoring this video. Please check out that comment down below to support the channel. And I gotta be honest, I'm about to be AFK for a while during the holidays, but I sincerely hope all of you can surround yourselves with love and comfort in whatever way you can during these trying times. That is all from me, so I will see you all very, very soon, and until next time, peace.